There's a moment in life when everything feels like it's exactly where it should be. A stillness, a sense of control. That's where I thought I was. I'm Daniel Harper, 38, married for 12 years, father to a 7-year-old daughter named Sophie. My wife, Lauren, and I built a life together that, to an outsider, probably looked like a Hallmark card. Our mornings were predictable. I'd wake up at 6, brew coffee while she stayed in bed for an extra 15 minutes, scrolling through her phone. Sophie would run into our room, demanding pancakes, and I'd be the one flipping them because, let's face it, Lauren could burn water. We had our routine, and I liked that. Lauren was the organized one, the planner. She worked in marketing, which meant she spent a lot of time on Zoom calls, strategizing campaigns for clients. I worked in IT, mostly remote, which meant I could be home with Sophie after school. It was a good setup, comfortable. But in hindsight, I should have noticed the cracks. They were small at first. Lauren started spending more time working late. Texts from an unknown number would make her smile in a way she didn't when she was with me. Little things, a change in perfume, a sudden interest in going to the gym at odd hours. But I dismissed them. I told myself I was being paranoid. Then there was the missing bracelet. It was a silver one, the kind I bought her on our anniversary 2 years ago. She loved that bracelet. Wore it every day. One evening, while we were getting ready for bed, I noticed it wasn't on her wrist. "Where's your bracelet?" I asked. Lauren hesitated just for a second, but I caught it. "Oh. I must have left it at the office," she said, turning away. That was the first time I felt something was off. Then, a few nights later, she left her laptop open on the kitchen counter. Lauren was always careful with her devices. But that night, I glanced at the screen and saw a message pop up in a chat window, a heart emoji followed by, "I can't wait to see you again." I didn't recognize the sender's name. A cold wave ran through me, but before I could read more, Lauren walked in and casually shut the laptop. "Long day," she muttered. "Going to bed." I stood there, my stomach in knots. I told myself it was probably nothing. But deep down, I knew this was the beginning of something I didn't want to face. I should have trusted my gut. The problem is, when you love someone, you build a narrative that makes sense, even when the evidence starts contradicting it. You tell yourself that a missed kiss in the morning is because of stress, not disinterest. That a change in perfume is just variety, not a signal of something or someone new. That a smile at a phone screen is just a funny meme, not a whispered secret. It took me exactly 12 days to stop lying to myself. The first signs. I started paying attention. Not in the way you normally observe your spouse, the passive, trusting kind of way, but the way a detective watches a suspect. Lauren's phone never left her hand. At home, she used to leave it face up on the counter, but now, it was always face down, as if she were shielding something. She'd giggle at text messages, but when I asked, she'd say, "Just a work thing." Then there were her new routines. She started leaving earlier for work. She used to have breakfast with me and Sophie, sipping coffee in her pajamas. Now, she barely finished half a cup before rushing out the door. Gym sessions doubled. She had never been obsessed with working out before, but now, she was at the gym almost every evening, coming home sweaty and flushed. New lingerie. This one hit me the hardest. It was expensive, delicate, not the kind she usually bought for herself. And here's the thing, I hadn't seen her wear it once. I felt the slow, gnawing sickness of suspicion, but I needed proof. The discovery. The moment that broke everything wide open happened on a Friday night. Lauren had left her laptop on the kitchen counter again, something she never did. She had gone upstairs to take a shower, and Sophie was asleep. I stood there, staring at the screen. It wasn't locked. I knew I shouldn't invade her privacy. I wasn't that guy. But something primal inside me, the part of me that refused to be blind, took over. My hand moved before I could stop it. I clicked on the Messages app. And there it was. A conversation with someone named Jay. "Jay, I can't wait to see you tomorrow. Last night was amazing." "Lauren, same. I still feel you on me. Jay, you're addictive. Lauren, shoo, behave. Daniel is home. I stopped breathing. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it would break through my ribcage. Last night. She told me she had been working late. She had been with him. I scrolled up. The messages were explicit. Descriptions of things she had done to him, things he had done to her. Complaints about me, how I was too predictable, too safe, how I'd never take risks like he did. The words blurred as my vision darkened. Shock and numbness. I shut the laptop with a trembling hand. I needed air. I needed to get out of the house before I did something reckless. Lauren came downstairs moments later, wrapped in a towel, her hair wet. She smiled at me, the same smile she had given me 1,000 times before. Hey, babe, she said, completely unaware of the war raging inside me. You okay? I looked at her, really looked at her, and I felt something snap. The woman I had loved for over a decade, the mother of my child, had betrayed me in a way I never imagined possible. I nodded, forcing my voice to stay even. Yeah. Just tired. She walked past me, her skin still damp from the shower, the same body another man had touched last night. I had to fight the urge to scream. Instead, I walked upstairs, sat on the edge of our bed, and stared at the wall for hours. The next move. The next morning, I woke up with one goal: I needed more proof. I wasn't going to confront her until I had everything. If she tried to deny it, I needed to be able to shove the truth in her face. So, I did what I never thought I would do. I became a spy in my own marriage. I checked her phone whenever she left it unattended. She deleted most of her texts, but I found a few damning ones in her email trash. I tracked her location. I installed a GPS tracker on her car, disguised as a Bluetooth device. If she was going to meet him, I was going to know. I followed her. On Tuesday, when she said she had a late client meeting, I left work early and drove to her office. She never showed up there. Instead, she went to a hotel. I parked across the street and waited. An hour later, she walked out, adjusting her hair. Jay followed. I didn't recognize him at first. But then, as he turned his head, my stomach dropped. It was Jordan. Jordan, her co-worker. The guy I met at a company dinner a few months ago. The one who shook my hand and called me lucky. That smug bastard was screwing my wife. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I wanted to get out, to beat him until he never smiled that cocky smile again. But I held back. This wasn't the time. Breaking point. I went home that night and barely spoke. Lauren noticed. You've been quiet, she said, sitting on the couch beside me. I shrugged. Work's been rough. She kissed my cheek, murmured something about taking a shower, and disappeared upstairs. I watched her go, my mind spinning. How many times had she done this? How many times had she come home from him and climbed into bed with me? I felt sick. But now, I had what I needed. Tomorrow, I would confront her. And everything would change forever. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the last 12 years in my head. The vacations, the lazy Sundays, the times I thought we were happy. The way she used to look at me. The way she doesn't anymore. At some point, I got up and went to Sophie's room. She was curled up in bed, her little arms wrapped around her stuffed rabbit. I sat on the floor next to her bed and just watched her breathe. She was the only reason I didn't lose it. Tomorrow, I was going to destroy the illusion of our perfect life. The setup. Morning came fast, and Lauren was her usual self, pretending. She kissed my cheek before heading to work. See you later, babe, she said, like she hadn't been sleeping with another man behind my back. I waited 10 minutes, then followed her. She didn't go straight to the office. She went to him. I parked across the street and watched as she entered Jordan's apartment. No hesitation. No guilt. That was it. I drove back home, my hands gripping the steering wheel like a vice. I had the proof. The texts. The hotel footage. The GPS logs. And now, this. Tonight, she wouldn't be able to talk her way out of it. The confrontation. She walked through the front door at 7:30 p.m., carrying a takeout bag. "Hey," she called. I picked up Thai for dinner. I didn't answer. She found me in the living room, sitting in the dark. "Daniel," she asked, her voice cautious. I turned on the lamp beside me. The light illuminated the printed texts on the coffee table. Screenshots of her messages with Jordan. Printouts of their hotel reservations. GPS logs of her car parked at his apartment. Lauren froze. The takeout bag slipped from her hand, hitting the floor with a dull thud. "What the hell is this?" she whispered. I didn't move. Didn't blink. "You tell me." She stared at the evidence, her face draining of color. "Daniel, don't lie." My voice was deadly calm. "I watched you walk into his apartment this morning. I know everything." Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked like a deer caught in headlights. She tried again, but her voice broke. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then she did something that made my blood run cold. She sighed. Like she was relieved. "You're not even going to deny it?" I asked, my voice shaking with rage. She sat down across from me, rubbing her temples. "Daniel," she stopped herself. "I didn't want it to come out like this." I laughed, bitter and sharp. "Oh, I'm sorry. Did I ruin your perfect plan? Were you hoping to keep lying to me forever?" She flinched. "No. I didn't know how to tell you." I slammed my fist on the table. "You didn't know how to tell me? Maybe you could have started with, 'Hey Daniel, I'm sleeping with my coworker.'" Tears welled up in her eyes. "I never meant to hurt you." I felt something snap inside me. I stood, towering over her. "Do you love him?" She hesitated. That hesitation was my answer. I let out a shaky breath. "How long?" She swallowed hard. 6 months. 6 months. Half a year of lying to my face. Of kissing me goodnight with another man's touch still on her skin. I felt like I was going to be sick. "Daniel." "No," I cut her off. "You don't get to talk. Not yet." I paced the room, my chest heaving. "I want to know everything. Every single disgusting detail." Lauren wiped at her eyes. "It just happened." I laughed again. "That's the best you can do? It just happened?" She looked down. "I didn't go looking for it." "But..." I felt like we were drifting apart. I froze. "So this is my fault?" "No. That's not what I meant." She took a deep breath. "But Daniel, we haven't been the same for a long time." I felt my hands clench into fists. "So you fixed that by screwing another man?" She had the audacity to look guilty. "I was lonely." I let out a hollow laugh. "You were lonely?" My voice was rising. "Do you have any idea how many nights I lay next to you, wondering why you wouldn't even look at me anymore?" I blamed myself. "Lauren. I thought maybe I wasn't doing enough. And the whole time, you were with him." Tears streamed down her face now. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. But it did." I stared at her, my breathing ragged. "And you let it." She buried her face in her hands. I don't know what to say. I exhaled, my body trembling with rage. "Tell me something, Lauren. What was the plan? Were you ever going to leave me? Or was I just the backup plan?" She didn't answer. That was answer enough. The breaking point. Silence stretched between us. Then, Lauren lifted her head. Her face was red and swollen from crying, but something in her expression shifted. "Can we fix this?" I stared at her. "Are you insane?" "I mean it, Daniel." She reached for my hand. "I don't want to lose you." I jerked away from her touch like it burned me. "You lost me the second you let him touch you." "Daniel, please," she sobbed. "We have a family. We can work through this." I scoffed. "Work through this? You've been lying to me for 6 months." "I know," she choked. "But I still love you." I laughed bitterly. "No, Lauren. You don't. You love the idea of me. The safety. The stability. But if you truly loved me, you wouldn't have done this." She sobbed harder, shaking her head. I sighed, suddenly exhausted. "You made your choice, Lauren. Now, I'm making mine." Her breath hitched. "What do you mean?" I walked to the hall closet and pulled out the suitcase I had packed that morning. She paled. "Daniel, no. I'm done." I met her eyes, and for the first time, I felt nothing. "I'm filing for divorce." Lauren collapsed onto the couch, sobbing uncontrollably. I didn't stay to comfort her. I walked out the front door, knowing that this was the end of us. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My heart pounded in my chest, adrenaline still rushing through me from the confrontation. I had walked out, left her there sobbing on the couch, and yet I didn't feel victorious. There was no satisfaction in watching her crumble under the weight of her betrayal. No relief in finally saying the words, "I'm done." Instead, I felt like I had been hollowed out, gutted from the inside. I had spent 12 years loving a woman who had never truly loved me back. She loved the security I provided. She loved the stability. She loved that I was the one who would wake up early to take Sophie to school, the one who handled the boring but necessary details of life. But she didn't love me. And that realization burned deeper than any revenge I could plan. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I had 2 choices now. Walk away and let her deal with the consequences of her actions. Make sure she felt every ounce of the pain she had caused me. And as much as I wanted to be the bigger person, as much as I wanted to believe that karma would eventually handle Lauren and her affair, I knew myself too well. I wasn't just going to walk away. She didn't get to win. The plan. The next morning, I called a divorce attorney. I wasn't going to be one of those guys who let their emotions lead them into a messy, drawn-out battle. I wanted strategy. Precision. Control. I met with my lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Linda Graves, who had been handling high-stakes divorces for over 20 years. "You want full custody?" she asked, flipping through the file I had prepared evidence of Lauren's affair, the texts, the hotel receipts, the GPS logs. "Yes." Linda nodded approvingly. "You've done your homework." Normally, courts are hesitant to strip a mother of custody, but this, she gestured to the documents. "This gives you leverage." I leaned forward. "I want her to walk away from this with nothing. No alimony. No house. And I want to make sure Jordan gets dragged into this too." Linda smirked. "Petty. I like it." She tapped her pen against the table. "Does Lauren know you've lawyered up?" "Not yet." She smiled. "Good. We're going to keep it that way, for now." And just like that, the real battle began. The trap. Lauren spent the next few days in a pathetic attempt to fix things. She texted me constantly. "Please, can we talk? I miss you, Daniel. You don't have to leave. I made a mistake, but we can get past this." It was laughable. She wasn't sorry for cheating. She was sorry for getting caught. Meanwhile, I stayed quiet. I wanted her to believe she still had some level of control. I wanted her to think I was just emotional, that I might still be convinced to stay. Because while she was busy trying to manipulate me, I was setting her up. I reached out to Jordan's fiancé. Yes, fiancé. Turns out, Jordan wasn't just some single guy who had no attachments. He was engaged to a woman named Claire, a woman who had no idea that the man she was supposed to marry was screwing my wife. When I found her on social media, I hesitated for a moment. Was this too far? Was it cruel? Then I remembered the texts. Lauren's words to him. Her plans to sneak away to see him. Her lies. And just like that, the hesitation vanished. I sent Claire an anonymous email. Attached were screenshots of Lauren and Jordan's texts. Within hours, she responded. Claire, who the hell are you? Me, the husband of the woman Jordan has been sleeping with. Her reply took less than 30 seconds. Claire, meet me. We need to talk. The fallout. Lauren had no idea what was coming. 2 days later, I was sitting in a cafe across from Claire, a blonde woman in her early 30s with tired eyes and a diamond ring she kept twisting on her finger. I knew something was off, she whispered, scrolling through the messages on my phone. He was always on his phone. Always hiding it. I leaned back, watching as her world crumbled just like mine had. I have a plan, I said. She looked up. Tell me. I smirked. Jordan and Lauren work together, right? She nodded. I want to make sure everyone at that office knows exactly what's been going on. Her eyes widened, and for a second, I thought she might tell me that revenge wasn't worth it. But then she smiled. Let's do it. D-Day. On Monday morning, I put the final phase of my plan into motion. Lauren left for work as usual, still acting like she had a chance of fixing things. At 8:30 a.m., Claire walked into Jordan and Lauren's office building. She went straight to HR, presented every piece of evidence we had, and filed a formal complaint. At 8:45 a.m., Claire emailed the entire company. Subject line, Jordan and Lauren's affair, the truth. Inside? Screenshots of their texts. Hotel receipts. A breakdown of how long they had been sneaking around. By 9 a.m., Jordan and Lauren's reputations were shattered. Their bosses called them in. I imagine Lauren sitting there, trying to explain herself as the walls closed in. And then, at 9:30 a.m., she called me. I let it ring. Then, I picked up. Daniel, she gasped, her voice frantic. Did I what? I asked, my voice calm. She sobbed. They fired me. I felt nothing. Good. Lauren's breath hitched. You ruined my life. I smiled. No, Lauren. You ruined your life. I just made sure you faced the consequences. She was silent. Then, in a whisper, she said, I hate you. I chuckled. Then we're finally even. And with that, I hung up. I should have felt victorious. I had played my cards right, destroyed her carefully crafted lies, exposed her affair, and made sure she had nothing left to cling to. She had lost her job, her reputation, and whatever fantasy she had built with Jordan. But as I sat alone in my apartment that night, staring at my phone, a deep exhaustion settled over me. It was over. The marriage. The illusion of happiness. The life I had spent 12 years building. I should have been relieved. So why did I feel so damn hollow? Her desperation. Lauren called me 6 times that night. I let them all go to voicemail. Around midnight, she texted. Lauren, I need to talk to you. Please. Just once. I ignored it. Then, another message. Lauren, Daniel, I lost everything. I don't know what to do. I don't even know where to go. A few minutes later. Lauren, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just need to see you one last time. I stared at the screen, debating. I owed her nothing. And yet, I found myself typing back. Me, fine. Tomorrow. My place. 7 p.m. One conversation. That's it. The final meeting. At 6:59 p.m., there was a knock on my door. I let her stand there for a moment before opening it. Lauren looked wrecked. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face pale. She wasn't wearing makeup, and her hair was a mess, the first time in years I had seen her without everything perfectly put together. For a split second, I felt a flicker of sympathy. Then I remembered the texts. The hotel receipts. The 6 months of deception. And just like that, the sympathy disappeared. "Come in," I said flatly. She stepped inside, arms wrapped around herself like she was bracing for impact. I sat on the couch. She stood, hesitant, like she didn't know whether she was welcome to sit down. She wasn't. "What do you want, Lauren?" I asked, my voice cold. She flinched. "I don't even know where to start." "How about with why?" I said. "Why did you do it?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. Finally, she whispered, "I don't know." I scoffed. "That's bullshit." Lauren squeezed her eyes shut. I was unhappy. "So instead of telling me that, you decided to fuck someone else?" Her face twisted in pain. "It wasn't about sex, Daniel." I barked out a bitter laugh. "Oh, really?" Because based on the graphic texts I read, it sure as hell seemed like it was about sex. Tears welled in her eyes. It was about feeling wanted. About feeling excited again. I leaned back, arms crossed. "And I didn't make you feel wanted?" She hesitated. "Not in the same way." There it was. The final knife in the gut. I had spent years loving this woman, making sure she had everything she could ever want: a security, stability, a family. But none of it was enough. She needed thrill. She needed Jordan. "You know what the worst part is?" I said, my voice deadly calm. I blamed myself. For months, I thought I was the problem. Thought maybe I wasn't doing enough. Lauren let out a quiet sob. I shook my head. "And all that time, you were sneaking around behind my back. Lying to my face. Sleeping next to me after you had been with him." She covered her mouth, shoulders shaking. "I was selfish," she choked out. "I was so fucking selfish, Daniel. And I hate myself for it." I didn't respond. I didn't trust myself to speak. The silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. Then, Lauren looked up at me, eyes pleading. "Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" she whispered. I exhaled slowly. "I don't know." Her face crumpled. "I don't expect us to go back to how things were. I don't want you to hate me." I studied her carefully. The woman sitting in front of me wasn't the same woman I married. Or maybe she was, and I just never really knew her. Did I hate her? No. But did I still love her? Absolutely not. "I don't hate you, Lauren," I said finally. "But I'll never look at you the same way again." She bit her lip, nodding. "I deserve that." Another silence. Then she whispered, "What happens now?" I stood up. "I move on. And you figure out how to live with what you've done." She let out a quiet, broken laugh. "Yeah. I guess that's fair." She stood too, wiping at her face. "Goodbye, Daniel." I nodded once. "Goodbye, Lauren." And just like that, she walked out of my life. The aftermath. I expected to feel lighter after she left. Instead, I felt nothing. Maybe it would take time. Maybe it would hit me later. But at that moment, I was just numb. I sat on the couch, staring at the empty space where she had stood. Then, for the first time since this whole thing started, I let myself break. I buried my face in my hands and let out a shaky breath. 12 years. 12 years gone in an instant. But as much as it hurt, there was one undeniable truth. I was free. And for the first time in a long time, I could finally breathe. The thing about heartbreak is that it doesn't hit you all at once. It comes in waves. One day, you wake up and feel fine. Almost normal. Like maybe, just maybe, you're getting past it. Then the next day, you see a couple laughing together at a cafe, or hear a song you once played in the car with her, and suddenly you're right back in the pit. It's been 6 weeks since I last saw Lauren. 6 weeks since she walked out of my apartment, her eyes swollen from crying. Some days, I feel like I'm healing. Other days, I feel like I'm standing in the wreckage of a life that no longer belongs to me. Starting over. I moved into a new apartment, a small 2-bedroom place closer to Sophie's school. It was strange, going from a house filled with memories to a place where nothing belonged to her. I spent the first few nights staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had made a mistake. I had done everything right. I had been loyal. I had provided for my family. I had been a good husband, a good father. And yet, here I was alone. Lauren, on the other hand? She was suffering. The last I heard, she was couch-surfing between friends' places, still jobless, her entire reputation in ruins. She had tried to get in touch with Sophie multiple times, but our daughter refused to talk to her. And honestly? That hurt more than anything else. Sophie had always been close to her mother. Seeing that bond shatter because of Lauren's selfishness was the hardest part of all this. One night, I was tucking Sophie into bed when she looked up at me with big, tear-filled eyes and whispered, "Dad, is Mom ever coming home?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I don't know, baby." "Do you still love her?" she asked softly. I thought about it. About all the years. About all the good memories tangled up with the bad. "No," I said finally. "I don't." She nodded slowly, curling up under the covers. "Me neither." And that was the moment I knew Lauren hadn't just lost me. She had lost everything. A ghost from the past. 2 months after the divorce papers were filed, I got a text from an unknown number. "Unknown, can we talk?" I stared at the screen, knowing exactly who it was. Lauren. I considered ignoring it. But something inside me, curiosity, maybe made me respond. "Me, about what?" A few minutes later. "Lauren, I need closure." Closure. The word made me laugh bitterly. She had destroyed our marriage, shattered our family, and now she wanted closure? I should have said no. Instead, I found myself texting back. "Me, fine. One conversation. That's it. The final goodbye. We met at a park. Neutral ground. Lauren looked different. Thinner. More exhausted. The confidence she once carried was gone, replaced with something hollow. For the first time, I saw regret in her eyes. She sat down on the bench beside me, staring at the ground. "Thanks for meeting me." I didn't answer. She took a deep breath. "I lost my job. My friends barely talk to me. Even my parents won't take my calls." She let out a humorless laugh. "I lost everything, Daniel." I watched her carefully. "And?" She blinked. "And? I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry." I let out a slow exhale. "It's too late for that." She nodded. "I know." Silence stretched between us. Finally, she whispered, "Do you think I'll ever fix this?" I shook my head. "No. Some things can't be fixed, Lauren." Her eyes filled with tears. "I miss you." I felt nothing. For months, I had carried the weight of her betrayal. I had lost sleep over it, let it consume me. But sitting here, looking at the broken woman in front of me, I realized something. I was free. She wasn't. And she never would be. I stood. "Goodbye, Lauren." She looked up at me, eyes pleading. "That's it?" I nodded. "That's it." and then I walked away. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't look back. A new beginning. Life moves on. A month after that final meeting, I started feeling lighter. The pain didn't vanish overnight, but it became manageable. One day, while picking up Sophie from school, I ran into someone unexpected. Emma. An old friend. Someone I had once been close with before life pulled us in different directions. We got coffee. Talked for hours. For the first time since everything fell apart, I laughed. Maybe it wasn't love. Not yet. But it was something. A beginning. And as I walked back to my car, I realized. Lauren may have destroyed our marriage. But she didn't destroy me.